Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I never wanted to be the son who sits at the end of a glossy mahogany table while men in suits count his destiny like chips in a poker game. I wanted to be the son who makes the small talk, cracks a joke, and leaves early to go grill burgers. I became a CFO instead. Life is full of misunderstandings like that. Our family business, Hale Harriman Industries, is the sort of company that still sends holiday turkeys to suppliers and handwrites thank you notes to customers who buy forklifts in bulk. We build unglamorous things, shipping crates, modular storage systems, heavy-duty shelving, and we do it with the zeal of pilgrims who discovered stainless steel before Thanksgiving. My father, Richard Hale, founded the place 47 years ago with a loan, 2 friends from church, and a wobbly press brakie named Mildred. Dad believes in 3 things: Q4, Q3, and family. Not necessarily in that order. My brother, Lucas, believes in ambition the way some folks believe in juice cleanses. Every January he does the same ritual. He buys a crisp blue notebook, writes domination across the front in block letters, and then he spends a year practicing signature variations. Mine says Victor Hale with a neat little accountant's loop in the H. His says Lucas A. Hale, President, and Lucas Alexander Hale, Chairman, and occasionally Lucas Hale, Emperor, then a doodle of lightning bolts. I have a wife, Sloane. We met on a plane, which sounds romantic until you learn it was a red-eye, and she asked if my head would keep lolling onto her shoulder because she wasn't signing up for that level of intimacy with a stranger. She has black hair, sharp cheekbones, and a lawyer's favorite accessory, a question. Sloane always wants to know why. Why would I pick polyester ties? Why do we store spare chairs in the boardroom closet as if they multiply on their own? Why does my father insist the company newsletter is funnier if he writes the jokes? She interrogates the world the way you poke a muffin to make sure it's not undercooked. Then there's Pepper, my father's German Shepherd, technically a rescue from the police department but really just a drama major in a fursuit. Pepper can find a tennis ball in a cornfield, and he insists on attending any meeting where lunch might be present. He likes me, tolerates Lucas, and worships my father. He also listens better than most board members. The day everything changed started like any other day when my father decides to stir the pot. He sent an all-caps email at 6:48 a.m. That said, family and board, special meeting at noon. Important future matters. Pizza will be served. You can spike attendance in any American company with free pizza. It's a fact of capitalism. At 11:57 I walked into the boardroom to find Dad at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, tie slack. Pepper sat at his left, on an ergonomic dog bed he hates but that cost the company $200 because leadership deserves cushioning. Lucas was at the far end already, flipping through his blue notebook, pen like a metronome. The directors murmured. Our corporate counsel, a man named Chase with a jaw so square it could level picture frames, stood near the projector looking important. Dad clapped his hands. All right, folks. Let's keep this short. As you know, I plan to hand off the reins. I'm not getting younger, though I remain devastatingly handsome. He winked at Pepper. Pepper wagged with board-approved enthusiasm. He went on about succession, responsible leadership, the weight of legacy, and the obligation of a Hale to make sure every pallet jack in the Midwest feels loved. Then he looked at me. I've watched Victor since he was a kid. He organized lemonade stands like they were IPOs. He can tell you the cost of goods sold on a lemonade cup if you wake him at 3 in the morning, with pulp or without. He's steady. He's honest. He's the one. I heard a small sound like deflation at the other end of the table. Lucas smiled with his lips while his eyes did a short obituary for my father's judgment. I glanced at Sloane, who was not on the board but had a knack for wandering into rooms where questions smelled fresh. She stood in the doorway with that lawyerly patience, arms folded, black hair coiled into a bun that said she wasn't here to blend. Dad nodded, ready for applause. Before we vote, Chase will handle a brief housekeeping item required by our groovy friends in compliance. Chase clicked to a slide titled Confirmation of Airship. Nobody breathed. Pepper yawned theatrically. Chase cleared his throat. Given the pending transfer of majority control to Mr. Victor Hale, certain documents must be entered into the record. These include a verified confirmation of familial status. The screen changed to a scan sheet with a lab logo, barcodes, and enough official stamps to impress the DMV. This is a DNA parentage test, conducted via buccal swab, which indicates a less than expected probability of paternity between Mr. Richard Hale and Mr. Victor Hale. Words are tricky things. The same sentence can land as a formality or a grenade. Chase's version had grenade hobbies. Lucas sat up taller. Sloane's face did a complicated equation and produced no solution. Everyone else stared at my father, who stared at the table like he'd misplaced his keys. I laughed. Someone had too. You bought one of those ancestry kits off the internet? Chase avoided my eyes. This test was conducted through a forensic lab used by the company for internal compliance matters. Per policy, we confirm blood relation when succession involves a familial designation. Since when? I asked. Since the audit committee proposed it 18 months ago, he said. He meant since Lucas proposed it 18 months ago. The board whispered. Dad's jaw worked. This is nonsense. Chase gestured at the screen. According to the report, the probability of paternity is effectively zero. As such, while Mr. Victor Hale is a valued executive, he cannot assume the role of family successor as defined under our bylaws. The board must consider alternate candidates. Silence has a weight. It sits next to you, a heavy cousin. My father's silence pressed the room flat. Finally, he whispered, "Who authorized this? Who approved using my son's cheek for an argument?" Victor consented when he signed the packet, Chase said gently. He clicked to a page with my scrawl. Standard forms. I had signed a stack of onboarding documents back when we updated everyone's compliance acknowledgments. There must have been a clause about testing that sounded routine. It didn't feel routine now. Lucas put the cap on his pen with a tidy click. "This is unfortunate, truly," he said, in the tone of a man observing his neighbor's lawn catching fire from behind shatterproof glass. "In light of this unexpected development, I propose an interim arrangement. Someone with continuity." Dad looked older in that moment, as if the screen had sucked color from his face. He didn't say my name. He didn't say Lucas's. He said, "We'll reconvene in 1 week," then he stood, and the room stood with him. It took 3 days for the whispers to harden into a narrative. The prodigal son was not a son. The forklift prince was a handsome stray. HR asked if I needed resources. Accounting wondered if my keycard required adjustments. The receptionist, who has seen everything and judged nothing for 20 years, hugged me behind a pillar and said, "Honey, this building has bad lighting. Don't let it tell you who you are." By Friday, the vote happened. The board temporarily relieved me of duties pending clarification. Lucas was named acting CEO. His blue notebook blossomed into a bouquet of signatures. He started wearing suits that made noise when he moved. He walked the hallways like he had invented carpet. Dad didn't show up to the vote. He called me that night, voice rough. "I need time," he said. Your mom, I need to talk to her about some things." He never called her anything but your mother. The switch felt cold. I went home to Sloane, who poured scotch into the good glasses, the wedding crystal that makes any liquid look like victory. She handed me one and said, "We're going to sue the universe." I tried to smile. Ambitious docket. "We will start small," she said, "with the lab." The trouble with conspiracies is you don't recognize them when they're happening because they don't wear t-shirts that say conspiracy. They wear crisp blue notebooks. Or they wear your wife's smile. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that grief comes in stages: shock, anger, shopping for legal pads. I tried all three. Sloane went into research mode, which meant she became a hummingbird around a flower bed of PDFs. I became a man who suspects everything, including his toothbrush. I looked at the lab report until it blurred, then I started a list of suspects on a yellow pad, which sounds like a cliché because it is, but it's also what you do when the floor tilts and you need bullet points. The list read: Chase, Counsel, Audit Committee, Lucas, the Lab, Mysterious, My Mother, Painful but Possible, Pepper, Ridiculous, Lucas, Obvious, Sloane, Impossible, Please be impossible. I stared at Sloane's name until the ink looked rude. She caught me. Of course she did. She has a sixth sense for when my brain decides to play dodgeball with facts. You're listing suspects? I'm brainstorming, I said. It's like a team-building exercise for my paranoia. She took the pad, read it, handed it back. Keep me on there, she said. Leave the door open to every idea, even the ugly ones. Then you can slam it on their faces with evidence. That's love, if you ask me. Not the Hallmark kind. The kind where your spouse says, "Consider me a suspect," and pours more scotch. The next week spun like a centrifuge. Lucas held a town hall where he did a lot of things with his hands and said the word innovation enough times to qualify for a coupon. He appointed 2 new vice presidents. He changed the coffee vendor. It felt petty, which is how victory often looks up close. Dad refused to see me. That surprised me less than it should have. He had 2 modes, fix it or freeze it. He was freezing, which meant he was thawing something else. Maybe old grievances. Maybe his own mistakes. I kept calling. He didn't pick up. I visited my mother. She lives in a brick colonial with a yard that looks like a golf course and a kitchen that looks like a cooking show lost its choreographer. She was baking. You know things are dire when your mother, who believes ovens are for storage, rolls out pie dough. She hugged me hard, then stepped back, eyes red. Your father is a fool. A dramatic, pig-headed, stubborn fool. So you didn't. Victor, she said. I carried you while your father sold pallet racks out of a van. I ate so many saltines I can't look at them without remembering morning sickness. I changed your diapers with coupons. She slapped flour onto the counter. Your father can have his crisis. He can have it until it begs for mercy. But not in my kitchen. Did he accuse you? I asked quietly. He implied. Which is different, but only by a hair. I left with a pie and a renewed commitment to finding the truth. On the way out, Pepper trotted up from the den where he often lounges during family arguments like a court-appointed mediator. He put a paw on my knee and stared into my soul in the dog way that says, I cannot fix your bureaucracy, but I can monitor the squirrels. I scratched his head and whispered, Buddy, if you know something, now is the time. He sneezed. I added Pepper, allergies, to my suspect list and laughed for the first time in a week. Sloane filed an injunction to preserve all records related to the test. The lab sent copies that looked surgically precise, with chain of custody logs, verification codes, and signatures by people with names like Don and Mitch who probably wear white shoes to work. We combed through it together. This is thorough, I said. Almost too thorough, Sloane replied. Like someone who knows the manual wrote a performance of the manual. We brought in a forensic consultant named Carla who radiated competence. Carla used to work for a state crime lab. She has the calm of a surgeon and the wardrobe of a detective who owns exactly 3 blazers. She peered at the chain of custody sheet for longer than a person should stare at a piece of paper without developing feelings. There, she pointed. 2 signatures from the same person, 2 days apart, same angle, same pressure. People don't replicate their signature that perfectly unless they are tracing themselves or copy-pasting. Copy-pasting a pen? I asked. Tracing, she said. Or overlaying. Possibly someone scanned and printed back for the file. Small thing. But I collect small things. We visited the lab. I say we, but really Carla and Sloane did most of the talking while I tried to maintain the expression of a man who understands reagents. The lab manager gave us a tour that smelled like cleanliness and denial. He assured us the results were sound. He pointed to machines that beeped. Carla asked about chain of custody protocol. He recited paragraphs. Sloane smiled like a shark with a law degree. 2 days later, Carla called. You need to see this. She sent a high-resolution scan of the report overlaid with another document. The headers were identical. The barcode at the top right, identical. 1 tiny dot under the lab logo, identical. Whoever produced your report reused an earlier template, she said. Templates are normal. But this particular template has microprinting unique to a case from last year that I worked on. See the dot? It's a defect in their printhead that they replaced in June. Your report is dated August. That dot shouldn't exist. I stared at the dot. It was a pixel of betrayal. Someone faked it, I said. Or someone used an old image to build a new report, Carla replied. Either way, your result is suspect. We need to subpoena the raw data. Lucas learned about our little expedition and texted me, "You're embarrassing yourself." He included a flexed bicep emoji, because of course he did. Meanwhile, the office rumor mill upgraded me from illegitimate to intergalactic. I heard someone speculate that I had been switched at birth. Someone else suggested Mom had a summer in Paris. One afternoon a forklift operator named Raoul spotted me by the loading dock and said, "Look, man, my cousin tested 2 times at one of those places and got 2 different answers. They think I'm 30% Swedish on Tuesdays." We bumped fists. Solidarity lives in the strangest places. I also started to notice things about Sloane. Or rather, I noticed that I wasn't noticing much about Sloane because she was less present. Late meetings. Early runs. Phone calls with someone labeled K in her contacts. She brushed it off as casework. I brushed off my instincts like crumbs. Then I found the emails. I wasn't snooping. Honest. I was looking for a PDF she had saved to our shared cloud, something about lab protocols. Her folder structures are a municipal ordinance, civil, criminal, corporate, miscellaneous. In miscellaneous, nested like a bad walnut, a folder named Don't. That's the thing about lawyers. They write good labels. Inside, a handful of emails between Sloane and Lucas. Subject lines like timeline and AVL. Threads where she answered his questions about corporate procedure, notes on the bylaws, and one message where she wrote, "Once the interim designation is in place, seal it with optics." That could mean 10 things and none of them friendly. At the end of a chain, a single line from Lucas, "We'll all be happier when this is over. You and me especially." No kiss emoji. No hearts. Enough implication to make my stomach do a split. I sat on the edge of our bed holding a laptop that felt like it was humming a funeral march. My brain fired all the greatest hits: denial, righteous anger, the urge to break a plate. I closed the computer and stared at the ceiling fan. A person wants to believe that the person they married is, at minimum, not working against them with their brother. Sloane found me an hour later. "You look like a painting by man who knows something." "I saw the emails," I said. "Between you and Lucas." She didn't flinch. "Okay." "Okay?" I echoed. "That's your opener?" "Yes," she said. "You could ask me what they mean. You could decide I get a sentence before you build a scaffold." "Please," I said. "By all means." Her eyes were tired, her voice precise. "Lucas came to me 8 months ago. He said Dad was already moving to name you successor. He said he wanted to understand the process, make sure the board did its due diligence, and avoid scandal. I believed him. I gave him public information, explained procedures. It never occurred to me he would weaponize any of it. That's my professional mortification." "And your personal mortification?" She looked down at her hands. "I should have told you. I kept thinking I would. Then it got messy. Then it got worse." A long pause. "Victor, your brother is not subtle. He implied a lot of things. He suggested that you and I were wrong for each other. He suggested I would be happier with someone who wants the world. He tried to kiss me once. I pushed him away. I did not mention it because it felt like lighting a match in a fireworks store. That was a mistake. My impulses did a traffic jam. Relief. Anger. Doubt. They all honked. So there's no affair." "No," she said. "There is no affair. There was an attempted kiss on a balcony at a charity gala where the shrimp were undercooked. It was a miserable night in every way. If I had a time machine I would bring you with me to the balcony. We could triangulate his trajectory together and push him a satisfying distance." I exhaled. The fan kept spinning, unconcerned with human dramas. "I believe you," I said. "Good," she replied, "because I am not finished winning this." Carla filed motions. Sloane sharpened them. The court issued orders. The lab produced the raw data, reluctantly, which turned out to be as raw as tofu cubes, neat, Bland, suspiciously uniform. Carla tracked the barcodes and sample IDs and discovered a mismatch between the numbers on my report and the numbers on the envelopes used for collection. The lab had been fed a swapped sample. Someone provided them with cheek swabs that did not belong to you or your father, she said. Or someone labeled yours incorrectly. Either way, the data could be perfect science performed on the wrong mouths. We subpoenaed the collection video. Collection video is a phrase that sounds like a sinister YouTube channel, but most labs ask for a recorded clip when high-stakes testing is involved. Ours was a 30-second gem shot in Chase's office. The camera sat on a tripod. The frame captured my profile, Dad's jaw, and the green fern that every corporate office is required to display by law. A technician in scrubs swabbed the insides of our cheeks, placed swabs into tubes labeled with printed stickers, sealed them, and held them to the camera for account identification. The seals looked good. The labels matched. It all appeared boring, which is what you want when the truth is honest. Carla watched it 3 times and then said, "Freeze." She zoomed into the lower corner of the frame, where the fern pot sat, half out of focus. A white maintenance tag dangled on fishing line from the pot with a date, 0801. The letterhead on Chase's desk calendar in the foreground showed 0728. The collection form bore an 0803 stamp. "It could be incidental," she said, "but I have a habit of trusting plants. Someone staged this. They reshot this clip with different swabs after the original collection. That maintenance tag date gives them away." We reconstructed the likely sequence. The technician swabbed us properly on July 28. Our swabs were sealed and labeled. Then someone, somewhere, swapped those swabs with another set and filmed a new confirmation clip in Chase's office on August 3, with the fern quietly dating the crime like a gossip columnist. The lab received the second set with correct labels and a video. The lab produced results that analyzed strangers' DNA and called them ours. We didn't know whose mouths made it into those tubes. We did know who benefited. Sloan filed a motion to compel an independent retest supervised by an appointed officer. Lucas's attorney objected. Chase's firm filed responses that resembled origami, intricate, delicate, easily torn. The judge read the papers, listened to arguments, and said, "Do the test." The retest happened in a courthouse conference room. No ferns. No private office. A neutral tech from a lab in a different city. Seals signed by everyone in triplicate. A courier whose presence suggested he could bench press a sedan. Sloan watched every move as if playing chess on a timed clock. Dad showed up in a blazer and the expression of a man sitting for a portrait he does not want. We waited. Waiting is an American sport, and I am not good at it. While I waited, I developed passionate opinions on dishwasher loading. I alphabetized the pantry. I argued with the microwave. I also kept my suspect list on the fridge like a family calendar. The list looked less funny now: Lucas, counsel, Chase, maybe someone in the lab. Mom off the list. Pepper off the list, but still a good boy. Sloan's name remained with a tiny asterisk next to it that meant I am human and I know you are human and this hurts and I love you. When the envelope finally came, it did not arrive with a marching band. It arrived with a courier who asked me to initial 3 places and then left to bench press a sedan elsewhere. The letter said what my life had always said: Richard Hale is the father of Victor Hale. Probability of paternity, north of 99. 99. Family, complicated but intact. We moved fast. Sloan filed an emergency motion to admit the new results and to conduct discovery on the earlier test. The court set a hearing for the following week. Lucas posted a video on the company intranet about embracing change, which aged poorly within 24 hours. Dad called me for the first time in 3 weeks, voice shaky. "Victor." "Dad," I said. "I'm sorry," he said. "I thought I don't know what I thought. I'm old enough to know better, and still." He cleared his throat. "Your mother is refusing to speak to me except through Pepper." "How's Pepper's mediation style?" "Direct," he said, and sniffed, and then he laughed, which made me laugh, and crying while laughing is a human specialty we don't celebrate enough. In court, the judge took one look at Carla's fern analysis and said, "This is either the clumsiest case of evidence substitution I've seen or the most audacious." The lab manager tried to explain protocols. The video spoke for itself. The judge ordered depositions. Chase resigned the next day. Then his firm issued a statement about irreconcilable conflicts that read like a haiku of panic. Sloan prepped me for my deposition like a prizefighter. She also prepped Lucas. Not in a helpful way. In the way where his attorney attempted to prepare him and Sloan handed opposing counsel a list of questions that would make a bishop sweat. I watched Lucas walk into the conference room with his notebook and his swagger and something like fear behind the eyes. He left without the swagger. He was cornered by a fact: his fingerprints were on one of the tubes used in the fake collection. Not metaphorically. Literally. The lab had swabbed the outside of the tubes when suspicions arose and, because the universe occasionally has a sense of humor, the one labeled Richard Hale had Lucas's touch on it, like a reckless autograph. He claimed he handled the tubes while carrying the box from the courier to Chase's office. The problem was that the original collection occurred on July 28 and the retaped video on August 3. The courier's log had a single delivery on July 28. Nobody delivered anything on August 3. The only way Lucas touched a tube on August 3 was if he was in the room during the reshoot. The only reason to be in that room was if you were staging a fake. Sloan sat across from him. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. Neutrality can be terrifying when you were in it. Then came the part where my heart tried to throw itself out a window. The investigators pulled phone records and found a series of late-night calls between Lucas and a number registered to a prepaid phone. Location data placed that phone near our house. On the balcony. On the night of the charity gala. A camera across the street from the venue captured a grainy outline of two figures on a balcony. One of them had my brother's build. The other had my wife's hair. I shut my eyes. I told myself the story I had chosen to believe. Sloan had told me he tried to kiss her. If I trusted her, this was evidence of that, not of anything else. She squeezed my hand. "I will say it under oath," she whispered. I shoved him so hard he spilled his drink. The shrimp deserved it. They deposed her next. She spoke calmly. She told the story. Lucas's attorney tried to make a moment out of it. He failed. There's an art to trying to humiliate someone who is not ashamed. He did not have it. The judge set a date for a hearing on corporate governance. My father came. My mother came. Pepper did not, because even in America there are limits to courtroom decorum. The courtroom creaked with the presence of our employees and shareholders, with curiosity, with popcorn energy. The judge banged the gavel and moved briskly. We entered the results of the independent test. We presented the fern video. We presented the fingerprint analysis. We implied what didn't need underlining. Lucas orchestrated the swap to trigger the bylaw that would force my removal. Chase facilitated. The lab cooperated, knowingly or not. Overlay, overlay, overlay. The story built itself like scaffolding. Then the judge asked if anyone had anything to add. Lucas stood. People in the audience held their breath like it was a balloon they were trying to keep from squeaking. He looked at my father. "I am sorry," he said, with a voice that could pass for humility if you were drunk. "I did what I thought necessary to protect the company. Victor is careful. We need aggressive. These aren't times for caution." Dad stared at him. Then Dad stared at me. His expression was an abacus. He clicked the beads. He turned to the judge. "Your Honor," he said, "I want this on the record. I made mistakes. I let my vanity and fear make me cruel. I forgot that blood doesn't need a lab to tell it what it is. I ask that the court restore Victor to his position and accept my resignation effective immediately. The company doesn't need a king. It needs a leader who understands both numbers and people. That is Victor." As for Lucas, he swallowed. I asked the court to bar him from serving on the board for a period to be determined appropriate. He can start a newsletter. There was a rustle. Someone coughed a laugh and regretted it. The judge nodded, scribbled, conferred, ruled. I was reinstated. Lucas was removed from the board for 5 years. The court referred the matter of evidence tampering to the district attorney. Chase's firm creaked like a ship in a movie. Sloan squeezed my hand again. The gavel banged. The room exhaled. Afterward, in the hallway, Dad hugged me. It was not a delicate hug. It was the kind you give a person when you accidentally knock a bookshelf onto them and want to reassure both of you that bones remain intact. He leaned back, eyes wet. Son. I have never been more grateful for a three-letter word. We drove back to the office. People clapped. Raoul the forklift philosopher whistled the loudest. Someone started a chant that fizzled after 4 syllables because nobody wanted to chant in front of the HR director. Pepper launched himself at my knees with canine joy and then at my father's with canine forgiveness. My mother arrived with cupcakes decorated to look like DNA helices topped with little candy hammers. Women are the backbone of civilization and also the decoration committee. I called an all-hands meeting for late afternoon. We crammed into the cafeteria, the only room big enough to hold both bodies and company myth. I stood on the little platform where we normally unveil new safety posters and I told everyone what they deserved to hear, the truth. I kept it clean, which is to say I told it like a book report written by someone who likes you. I said we would rebuild trust. I said we would install controls that make it impossible for any single person to reroute a river. I said we would upgrade the coffee again. Because coffee is the church of productivity and we should invest in our congregants. People laughed. Some cried. Lucas stood at the back like a statue practicing not existing. Later, in the boardroom, just family, the air still tasted like victory and cardboard from the pizza boxes. My father opened a bottle of champagne that someone had labeled for when we signed a new deal 12 years ago and put into the fridge next to salad dressing that predates 2 vice presidents. He poured into whatever glasses we could find. One was a mug shaped like a forklift. One was a measuring cup. Sloan and I shared a real flute because I felt like if we used separate glasses, fate would read into it and file a motion. Dad held up his drink. To truth, he said, which I ignored when it wore a familiar face and chased when it wore a suit. To Pepper, my mother added, and Pepper wagged with humility. I turned to Lucas. He had dropped his eyes to the table, tracing the grain with his finger like a man mapping other choices. Part of me wanted to forgive him in the way you forgive a toddler for kicking your shin. Part of me wanted him to move to Idaho and become a lumberjack named Duke. Family is a confused little planet. We orbit each other because gravity doesn't care if we like it. I picked up my glass. I felt the room lean toward me, the way rooms do when it's time for a button. Most families don't get buttons. Most families get sloppy codas and holiday fights. We got a line, courtesy of my better angels and my petty devils working briefly in cooperation. I raised the glass. Turns out, I am the real Hale. And you're just a fail. It landed like a soft punchline. Not cruel, not kind, but honest. People laughed. Even Lucas, reluctantly, because the alternative was to never laugh again. Dad's shoulders loosened. My mother said, language, and then smiled because she taught us better and sometimes loves us anyway. That night Sloan and I went home and sat on the balcony where a half-finished fight had taken place months before. The city felt like a cat that had decided to settle in our laps. We lit it. Sloan leaned her head on my shoulder. I'm sorry about the emails, she said. Me too, I said. I'm sorry about the list on the fridge. I liked the asterisk, she said. Very you. We will put in some new policies at work, I said. We will also put in some new policies here. Like no secret strategy consultancies with my brother, even if he promises to save the company by personally inventing a new alloy. Fair, she said. Also a new policy for you, when life hands you a fern, believe the fern. We laughed. We held hands. The city exhaled. Down the block a dog barked, and I thought of Pepper keeping watch over my father, over his long foolish heart that had finally decided to act like a father again. The next weeks drifted toward normal. Not the old normal. A sturdier one. We called the employees back to ask what would make their lives easier besides raises, which are already in the budget because I'm not a monster. They asked for little things. Better gloves. More break room microwaves. A schedule that doesn't require overtime every time the holidays sneeze. We gave them those things. Productivity went up because kindness is a machine that moves pallets, too. Lucas disappeared to a co-working space across town and started a newsletter Indeed. It's about leadership and disruption and includes a section called Mindset Minute. I read it, Like I would read the diary of a relative stuck on a boat. He registered a consultancy. He will probably land on his feet. He has always had good feet. Dad retired for real. He took up woodworking, which is either the universe's idea of a joke or proof that you can turn a lifetime of metal into a late-life affair with maple. He made me a cutting board with my initials. He made Pepper a toy shaped like a pallet jack. He made Mom a spice rack and called it the apology shelf. Mom put oregano on the top tier like a crown. At the first board meeting after the storm, I sat at the head of the table and did not feel like a king. I felt like a dad holding a newborn company that needed burping. The directors looked at me and I looked back and we all agreed to pretend we knew what we were doing until we did. That's leadership. That and making sure the coffee doesn't taste like burnt hope. A month later I found Lucas in the employee parking lot, standing next to his car, staring at the office windows. He turned when he heard my steps. "How's domination?" I asked. "Rebranded," he said. "To iteration." "That's almost charming." He nodded at the building. "You'll be good at it." "I will," I said, and it wasn't bravado. It was relief. "I will also be learning," which is code for failing with a helmet on. He laughed, winced. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words sounded like gravel but they made it out. "Me too," I said, because families are rubber bands that stretch and sometimes snap and sometimes just bruise. We stood there a minute. Then he said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Dad had read us a fairy tale where the middle child gets the company and the older child opens a taco truck?" "All the time," I said. "I would visit your taco truck every Tuesday." He smiled for real. "You'd complain about the margins. Only if you used artisanal napkins." He got into his car. Before he shut the door, he looked at me. "For what it's worth, I never slept with Sloane." "I know," I said. "She shoved me," he said. "My shirt smelled like cocktail sauce for a week." "You deserved it." "I did," he said, and then he drove off, and I stood in the lot feeling like the world had rotated 1 honest degree. We threw a barbecue for the employees at the end of the quarter. Raoul grilled. HR tried to outlaw fun. Pepper chased a tennis ball under picnic tables while Dad recited the history of pallet jacks to anyone who wandered too near. Mom brought cookies shaped like shipping crates. Sloane stole one and said, "Evidence." I made a speech. Short. I thanked people for saving my life by saving our work. I promised no more surprise DNA tests. Everyone cheered that line like it was the chorus of a song we never asked to learn. Then we ate and laughed and argued about the correct ratio of ketchup to mustard on a hot dog. America. Late in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was the district attorney's office. The lab had entered into a consent decree, admitted their systems had been exploited, and agreed to reforms. Chase had been indicted for evidence tampering and obstruction. Lucas had been offered a plea deal on a misdemeanor charge for interfering with evidence, the price of which included community service and a fine big enough to buy premium napkins for a year. The system wheezed and delivered something like accountability. I put the phone away. I didn't make an announcement. Justice sometimes needs less confetti. I looked at Sloane across the lawn, her hair lit like a way out. I walked toward her. She met me halfway. "Tell me something good," she said. "We have enough leftovers for a small nation," I replied. "That is good," she said, and then, quieter, "We are good." "We are," I said. "We survived a plot twist." She smiled. "American families specialize in those." I took her hand. The sun was doing that thing where it tries to make everything golden like a filter. Pepper dropped the ball at my feet, looked at me like, "Sir, your serve," and I thought about the table, the boardroom, the judge, the fern, the stupid tiny dot that saved my life. Heroes don't always work apes. Sometimes they are office plants with a maintenance sticker. I tossed the ball. Pepper thundered across the grass. Dad shouted, "Look at him go." As if speed were a gene he invented. Mom handed out cookies. Lucas's car pulled up at the curb. He stepped onto the grass with a bag of coleslaw and an expression that suggested he had wrestled with it and lost. He joined us. He ate a burger. He stood at the edge of things and then not at the edge. Eventually, As the sun softened and the grill cooled, someone found a bottle of something bubbly. People looked to me. Apparently I have become the person who says words at the ends of things. I thought about all that had happened, the blow, the suspicion, the ridiculousness of thinking Pepper might be in on it, the staggering stupidity of a forged fern. I lifted my plastic cup. Not the forklift mug. Not the crystal. It felt right. I turned toward my brother, who stood 3 feet away and approximately 1 zip code past regret. "Turns out," I said, smiling because life is silly and we survived it, "I am the real Hale. And you're just a fail." He groaned. Everyone laughed. Then he laughed. We clinked cups. The sound was small and satisfying, like 2 marbles bumping in a pocket. You can't fix a family with a punchline. You can't fix a company with one either. What you can do is hold people accountable, forgive them at human speed, and run the numbers at work while running toward the people who run toward you. I became the son who sits at the head of the table anyway, which still seems like a misunderstanding, but I have learned to enjoy the view. There is good coffee now. There are no hidden ferns. There is work to do and people to do it with. There is a dog who believes in me for reasons entirely unrelated to bylaws. There is a life you can laugh at once it stops scaring you. That's the one I chose, with my name on it. It fits. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.